Your roadmap to the latest in auto. Welcome to Highway Herald. Today, we're diving into a high-stakes energy showdown shaking North America. Canada is threatening to cut electricity exports to the US, a move that could disrupt power grids, spike fuel prices, and trigger shortages. But this isn't just about electricity. It's part of a bigger battle over oil, tariffs, and political leverage. Buckle up. This standoff could reshape trade, energy, and daily life. Let's break down the 7 key chapters of this electrifying drama. Key number 7, the Shockwave, Canada's high-stakes electricity play. In a move sending shockwaves through North America's power grid, Canada has signaled a possible cut to electricity exports to the US. This isn't just a bluff. States like New York, Michigan, and Minnesota rely on Canadian hydropower, which makes up a staggering 95% of US electricity imports. If Canada follows through, millions could face skyrocketing energy costs, grid instability, and blackouts. Industries like automotive, tech, and manufacturing, all dependent on stable power, could be thrown into turmoil. But this isn't just about energy. It's a strategic counterstrike against US tariffs. Canada is using electricity as leverage, making Washington face a tough choice: secure new power sources or negotiate before the lights go out. This battle isn't just about kilowatts. It's about who controls North America's energy future. Key number 6, crude realities, the oil card in Canada's hand. While electricity dominates headlines, Canada's true energy trump card is crude oil. The US relies heavily on Canadian oil, with pipelines like Keystone XL and Enbridge pumping millions of barrels south daily. To put it in perspective, 67% of US crude imports come from Canada. Even with domestic production ramping up, cutting that supply would be like yanking the fuel lines of a high-performance engine. Everything starts sputtering. Here's where it gets messier. If the US tightens tariffs, Canada could strike back by restricting oil exports, sending fuel prices soaring, industries scrambling, and global markets into chaos. The question is, can the US risk an oil crisis for trade policy? One thing is clear: energy isn't just a resource, it's a weapon, and both nations are locked in a high-stakes standoff. Key number 5, tariffs and tensions, a trade war revving up. The US-Canada trade war has escalated beyond steel and aluminum, now targeting energy resources. With the America First policy pushing for domestic production, the US has imposed tariffs on Canadian steel, aluminum, and consumer goods. In retaliation, Canada has hit back, targeting key US industries, including energy exports. This economic standoff has real-world effects. US automakers, construction firms, and manufacturers dependent on Canadian raw materials face rising costs and supply chain disruptions. Meanwhile, industries reliant on affordable, stable power brace for price hikes. But the impact isn't limited to corporations. Consumers feel the squeeze with higher fuel prices, expensive goods, and market instability. So the pressing question: will this trade war continue, or will both nations be forced to hit the brakes? Before we delve deeper, we'd appreciate it if you could subscribe to Highway Herald. Your support fuels our passion to create more content like this. Now let's explore key number 4, a web of energy and trade, the cross-border connection. The US may strive for energy independence, but its industrial backbone is deeply intertwined with Canadian resources. From oil and electricity to nickel, cobalt, and lithium, Canada supplies essential materials that power automobiles, tech, and EV production. Ironically, while the US pushes for an EV revolution, it still relies heavily on Canadian imports for battery manufacturing. But trade barriers don't just affect industries, they hinder progress. Tariffs and restrictions could stall advancements in greener technology, EV production, and efficiency improvements. With supply chains at risk, industries and consumers alike face rising costs and slowed innovation. So the real question is, can North America afford an energy standoff, or is collaboration the only way forward? Key number 3, economic shockwaves, the ripple effect on industries and consumers. When trade tensions rise, the effects don't stay in government halls. They hit industries, supply chains, and consumers' wallets. A US-Canada trade dispute can send shockwaves through energy, manufacturing, and especially the automotive sector. The US relies heavily on Canadian crude oil, natural gas, and electricity. Any disruption forces industries to seek costly alternatives, driving up production expenses and sticker prices. For automakers, supply chain disruptions, whether in battery materials or steel for chassis construction, can delay new models and increase costs. That means higher fuel prices, more expensive cars, and longer wait times for buyers. Even small businesses and dealerships feel the strain. History shows that even minor trade shifts ripple through the economy. With the US and Canada at odds, industries and consumers brace for impact. Key number 2, the political chess match: power, leverage, and diplomatic maneuvers. Trade wars aren't just about money, they're about power. In this high-stakes battle, both the US and Canada are playing their strongest hands. Canada, leveraging its energy exports, declares, "We're not just a supplier, we're a power broker." Meanwhile, the US pushes its America First strategy, aiming to cut dependence on foreign resources while maintaining global dominance. The big question: who needs them more? The US relies on Canadian energy, while Canada depends on US trade revenue. Energy exports have become a bargaining chip, with Canada threatening to cut power supplies, pressuring key US states. Beyond trade, geopolitical stakes rise as Mexico and China watch closely. With national security and global alliances at play, every move could reshape North America's energy future for decades to come. Key number 1, the price tag: what it means for your wallet and the road ahead. At the core of trade disputes and political power plays is a simple reality: how much you'll pay for fuel, electricity, and even your next car. If Canada cuts electricity exports, millions of Americans could see energy bills spike, especially during peak seasons. But that's just the start. Gas prices? They're on the line too. With Canada supplying over 2/3 of US crude imports, any trade restriction could send fuel costs soaring, increasing transportation expenses and consumer prices. The EV industry also faces uncertainty. Canada supplies critical battery materials, and tariffs could drive up EV prices, limit incentives, and slow electrification efforts. For automakers, this reshapes production strategies, forcing them to seek alternative suppliers, increase domestic investment, or cut back on certain models. Policymakers are now facing a critical decision. The final lap. Where does this road lead? So, what's the next move? Does the US continue playing hardball with tariffs, risking economic instability, soaring fuel costs, and supply chain disruptions? Or will both nations find common ground, ensuring a steady trade flow even if it means political compromise? This standoff walks a fine line between economic protectionism and practical cooperation. Whichever path they choose, the outcome will reshape the future of North America's energy and auto industries for years to come. And that wraps up our deep dive into this high-stakes energy showdown. From electricity export threats to rising oil prices and political power plays, this trade war is turning into one of the biggest economic battles in recent history. Now here's the big question for you. Will Canada's energy leverage push the US to negotiate, or is this just the beginning of an all-out trade war? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your take. And don't forget, subscribe to Highway Herald for more automotive updates, trade insights, and industry deep dives. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a beat. Until next time, keep your engines running and we'll see you on the next lap.